Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 72. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has liked, shared, commented, has given us reviews on the show, provided feedback. Your support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guests today. And if you have any suggestions for future guests, please reach out and let us know who you'd like to hear on the show. I also want to thank our sponsors. Family owned and operated since 1976, Samson Equipment has been specializing in full turnkey weight room build-outs from planning to installation. Based in Las Cruces, New Mexico, Samson provides professional weight room solutions for those looking to lead the way in advancing our strength and conditioning profession. Coaches relied on Samson as their top resource for all their weight room renovations because they provide the finest materials and design, product customization, and the most reputable customer service in the business. If you're in the market for elite level strength equipment, weight room renovations, or upgrades, be sure to check out SamsonEquipment.com to see how Samson has been delivering clients a long-lasting yet affordable product for over 4 decades. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out CerberusStrength.com and use promo code STRENGTH_game to save on your next order. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Jake Pudenz. Jake is the owner and head coach of Jake Pudenz Strength and Power. Primarily located in Des Moines, Iowa, Pudenz works with all types of strength athletes, both in person as well as remotely. Prior to opening his own business in 2020, he was the head strength and conditioning coach for the Denison Community School District from 2011 to 2020, which consisted of working with 10 different varsity and JV high school teams, several out-of-season programs, and non-athletes in the area. Pudenz got his start coaching as an intern at Got Strength Gym in Iowa City, where he worked and trained for 3 years until interning at Mike Boyle Strength Conditioning in the summer of 2011. He is an avid strength athlete and has trained and competed in multiple team, combat, and strength sports throughout his career. Following high school football and wrestling, he began training in MMA from 2006 to 2009, taking on multiple amateur and then professional fights. He soon after shifted to strongman, where he competed in various competitions before picking up competitive weightlifting in 2011. He was a full-time weightlifter and member of the California Strength National Team from 2012 to 2019, amassing multiple top 5 national finishes, including being named the 2019 109 kilo national champion, as well as finishing second and third at the American Open in 2019 and 2018, respectively. Since then, he's been training in jiu-jitsu more frequently, but continues to actively train in weightlifting, setting his sights on now the master level competition in the near future. I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Jake Pudenz. What's going on, everybody? Today, I've got a guest that has been in the works for a long time. For some reason, there should be a Georgetown, DC satellite college in smack dab in the middle of Iowa, because I've got Coach Jake Pudenz on the show today, and somehow we are wildly more connected than either of us would ever know. How's it going today, Coach?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm good, man. Like I said, I'm stoked to have you on. We've had a lot of former guests on the show that are good friends of yours and like pretty much Iowa neighbors. So, and like a lot of connections between Georgetown and DC and everything. And you've got a prolific background from coaching and athleticism yourself. So I'm excited to get you on today and chat a bit more.
Yeah, excited to be here. Carl kind of made that connection between DC and Iowa, and we've all just gone out there and met everyone in the process.
I know it's pretty awesome. Carl's still on my shit list for not being on, but I'm gonna poke at him until he eventually gets on. And I'm gonna tell you first right now that I'm still leaving episode 100 open for him. So if he declines that, I'm gonna be pretty pissed. But with all that said, hey, I really want to start how you got involved in the strength game, because you've done just like everybody from Iowa, Carl, Phil, all those guys, Jack, Rummels, everybody from there has done way too many sports, has dabbled in just about everything. And for you, it culminated in MMA, strongman, like high school sports, all the way up to a pretty successful career in competitive Olympic weightlifting. So how'd you really kind of get started? And can you speak a little bit on like your track record leading to what you're currently doing now for training?
Yeah. So getting out of high school, I was a pretty solid football player. I was a decent wrestler. I didn't want to do either of those things in college. I knew I wanted to keep lifting. I didn't know what I was doing. I found Ross and Namit. I don't know if you know that name. He was like a boxing coach, but he, like, before CrossFit was a big thing, he had all of these like high intensity interval workouts. I really liked his stuff back then. It was perfect for what I was doing. And so I ordered this book, and he would respond to emails personally. So I would just email back and forth with him, just kind of try to figure stuff out on my own. And then at that time, as I was doing that, I was at the University of Nebraska as a freshman, and I met a group of guys. There's a combative arts room, and there was a guy teaching jiu-jitsu to some of the guys there. Now that I'm doing jiu-jitsu more formally now, I realized that what we were doing was not good jiu-jitsu, but we were doing something on the ground. And a few months after that, it was in February of 2007, I got asked if I wanted to take a fight. And I was like, sure, why not? Took the fight. I won in like 20 seconds and liked it. And just kept doing more and more of it. Fought. I mean, lived in Thailand for 4 months. Went up to Russia and fought an MMA fight, which was weird. Did that. But anyway, so when I moved to Iowa City as an MMA guy, I was looking for a place to train. And I heard of Phil's gym, and I didn't have the money, so I just went out there. This was in 2008 at this point. I went out there, said, what can I do to train here? I have no money. I'm a junior in college. I transferred to Iowa. And he's like, well, you can intern here, and then you can train here for free. So I was like, all right, awesome. And then sure enough, that was the start of me being a strength coach, and then also training, learning how to train. So I mean, that's where I started learning the Olympic lifts. We all got super into strongman. So after I retired from fighting, in 2009 was my last fight. We all just started doing strongman, and then on the Arnold, we went to the Arnold in 2010, and we watched the big weightlifting. Like there's like the main stage weightlifting. It was Kendrick Ferris. It was like Team USA versus Nauru or something like that. It was crazy. So we watched it, loved it. We all decided next year, 2011, we were going to go back and all compete in it. So that's what we did. That was the first time I competed, and then here I am now.
That's awesome. It feels like a prerequisite if you train with Carl or Phil, like the Johnson brothers, that eventually you're going to be kind of coaxed into some sort of competition, whatever they're doing at that time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we were all super into strongman, and then Phil got really into weightlifting, and then we all got really into weightlifting.
Those guys go back and forth with everything, but it's awesome because I think it gives you such a well-rounded background to be able to kind of use everything, whether it be as a coach or it be as an athlete. And it's cool because when you talk to them, or you talk to like yourself or any of those guys that kind of fall from that tree, like being an athlete and coach are like synonymous together. Like they coincide. And I think that's awesome. And that's like a big part of what the show is. It's just showing that they're not mutually exclusive, and like to be a really good coach, you can be a good athlete. To be a really good athlete, like in some aspect, you should probably be coaching, because that's one really good way to kind of give back, and one really good way for those lessons and kind of those cues and every like the program and everything to kind of stick, because you're teaching more people as you go.
Yeah, I like as a coach, I feel like it's really hard to be a good coach and to have the respect of your athletes to ask them to do all this shit that's super hard if you've never put yourself through it. Like you don't know what they're going through, like physically. And if you don't know what they're going through, how the hell are you ever supposed to program for anybody?
Exactly. No, that's awesome, because I mean, there's not a lot of people like in this day and age, like hiring at the college level, trying to get interns to come in. Like, there's not a lot of people that want to work for free anymore, and I understand it, but there's a point in time where you kind of have to pay your dues, and there's few and far between people that actually go in anymore and are like, hey, listen, like I want to do anything. I'll sweep the sheds, like I'll mop the mats, whatever needs to be done. Like I want to learn. I want to be able to use the gym. So that's awesome that like you did that, and it's a testament to what Phil would do to bring someone in to do that.
Yeah,
Because I know
yeah, absolutely.
you probably learned a bunch from him, and like from that, what is that really kind of what sparked you to kind of get interested in coaching a little bit more? Because after that time, obviously, like you guys did strongman, and your amateur and like pro fighting was done, and you started picking up weightlifting. When were you kind of picking up weightlifting and kind of getting serious with it at the same time that you really wanted to do coaching, or did one of those kind of precede the other more so?
I knew like within months of starting at Phil's, like interning, this is what I want to do. I didn't know in what capacity, but I knew performance is what I wanted to do. Um, at that time, so I was out there all of the time. I had no money in college at all. Like there were times where I had literally $0 in my bank account. I was very fortunate that my roommate, he was my best friend, his parents bought a house for us to live in. And so I didn't have to worry about rent, but I would literally have $0. So there would be times where I didn't have money to eat. I would have shakes at the gym, and that would be the calories that I consumed throughout the day. But I was there all of the time. I was there training, I was there coaching, I was there just hanging out, and then class. Those were the only two places I really went. And so I knew coaching is what I wanted to do. So like I started getting serious. Like I said, I graduated in 2011. I went out to Mike Boyle's for my last internship in the summer of 2011. And then I got hired on at Denison that fall, October of 2011. And then that's when I started having time to really get serious about weightlifting. And so that's when I really started pursuing weightlifting for myself as opposed to just coaching.
Right. How did I know you like you talked about like the getting started with Denison, and I've after talking to everybody like kind of in the Midwest area, it's a little bit different as compared to like some other school districts and everything. How did that like kind of work out? Did you have contracts with certain teams that you were working with, or were you at like a certain location and it was kind of like almost an after school program, or how was that kind of started?
So it actually started out as the girls basketball coach hired me on to come work with his team. I think uh, we we agreed on like $500 for half the season, and then um, we got through the half of the season, and he's like, "Hey, I'll double it if you finish out the season." And then at that time, the school saw how well it was going, and so I think I was the first one in the state to be like actually hired by the school. Like I had the benefits and all that stuff, and so I was actually employed by the school district. Most other schools in Iowa that I know of contract the position out, so they'll like Ankeny Centennial here, which is it's like one of the wealthiest school districts in the state. It's crazy. They offered me 16,000 a year to come be their full-time strength coach. I was like, no, I'm good. But because of the Title IX rules, I think if one district offers you X amount, then another school in the same district has to also match that, have to add that same position and match that. And so they wouldn't pay anymore because then Ankeny would have to pay whatever they pay. It's some weird rule, but so that, I mean, that's how it works mostly. Most of the time it's contracted out. Like I said, I think I was the first one in the state to be hired on as a school employee.
Gotcha. It's definitely interesting because like talking to other people, obviously I haven't had any experience like working in that level, like the high school or youth level. So talking to more people and seeing kind of the shift and the trend to a lot more high schools, private high schools, school districts and stuff adopting strength conditioning either in a full-time capacity or like a contractor role is becoming more prevalent. So it's interesting to see how different states or different counties and stuff kind of do that. Because obviously, like some schools, like you said, are wealthy enough to kind of poach people or bring in full-time coaches in different capacities. So it's interesting to see because it definitely is becoming like one of the more popular routes for people getting into strength conditioning or getting into performance coaching. So now you kind of talked about it a little bit. You transitioned away from that, and we talked before we got started. Luckily, it's the Midwest is the Midwest, and it's definitely different than having COVID in California or anywhere on the West Coast, as we both know. But you transitioned away from kind of that and went out on your own, creating your own business and everything. How was that? How was that kind of transition, and what now being in almost 2 years into it, what's kind of that period been like for you coaching out on your own?
So a friend of mine, like years ago, probably 2017, a friend of mine, Charlie Zamora, he's one of the guys that started Caffeine and Kilos. He's like, you need to start thinking long-term. You need to start like putting the feelers out for like working with people remotely, because in Iowa, I'm sure you're the guy. So why aren't you capitalizing on that? And I was like, yeah, man, for sure. I'm also I'm lazy about doing things like that. I just don't feel like doing it. And then there's just, as every strength coach has had, problems with sport coaches. And I got to a point where I was just kind of sick of dealing with it. And so when I was getting ready for nationals, 2019 nationals, I was in Des Moines visiting my girlfriend at that time. And I was just looking for a CrossFit gym to drop into. And I talked to CrossFit Merle Hay. The owner's name is Nate Yoho. Turns out he was the right guy to talk to. So I went in, gym was awesome. And then a week later, I sent him a message. I'm like, hey man, would you ever be interested in having me come in and run some weightlifting classes? He said, let's talk. That was in May of 2019. Said, let's talk. We figured it out. And then turns out he owns several other CrossFit gyms in the area. And so I have free reign to run classes out of all those. So it just, right place at the right time, talking to the right guy, that kind of thing, just kind of helped this thing spread its wings. It was scary leaving guaranteed income, but at that point, at the time that I left in February of 2020, I'd been doing this part-time on the weekends, and I was already making more on those 2 days a week than I was working the rest of the time at the school. And so I knew at least my bills would be paid. I was willing to bet on myself enough. I'm like, all right, I've been broke before. I don't necessarily want to do it again, but I can. And so went out, and luckily it's just, my people have been awesome. They hung with me, and it's just kind of grown and grown.
I love that. I love what you said, like willing to kind of bet on yourself. And It's a calculated move too, obviously, because you didn't go into it and just kind of dive without kind of testing the waters a little bit to realize
Yeah.
that, I mean, it's fine to do that. Like I did that when I interned for fucking 5 times for free, but I was
Yeah.
leeching off my parents and
Yeah.
some of my friends' families to stay in their house or sleep in the DC parking lot, um, which thankfully never got in trouble for that. But no, like you knew kind of ahead of time that you could do it, and if anything, you could fall back on your laurels, and you know that like if you're broke again, you can deal with it. You can find a way through it, but most people don't take that chance on themselves to kind of branch out and go through everything. So that's pretty awesome. Is so you talked a little bit about remote classes and everything, or remote like athletes and everything. Are you also working with some people individually that are competing at a higher level, or primarily are you working just seminars with some of these like CrossFit affiliate areas?
Is primarily that. I do have like a decent sized competitive team. I think on the Jake Pudenz Strength and Power weightlifting team, we have like 14 or 15 lifters, which is pretty solid size for a weightlifting team. And then I have one kid who's obviously he's a very good lifter. This is his first year as a junior. Last year as a youth, he went to Youth Pan Ams and got second. Went to Youth Worlds, got sixth overall, second in the clean and jerk. And then in December, his last youth meet at the American Open, I'm trying to remember that I can think of. He's the fifth youth American ever to clean and jerk 400 pounds. I mean, he crushed the American record, the youth American record. So he's the highest level kid I have. He's very good. But he's fun to work with.
Yeah, don't tell me what weight class he is jerking 400 pounds. I don't want to know.
He's a 109.
Okay. That slightly makes me feel a little bit better if he was like, but still, that's damn impressive. And that's awesome that he's still like he just passed out of the youth level, I'm assuming. So
Yep.
now he's
Yeah,
gonna
he's a
be in a
junior
bigger
now.
pool. Okay.
Yeah,
No, that
he just won junior nationals at nationals in June. Um, so that was and he's just off of the junior Pan Am team. It's called the 81% rule that they base off of junior worlds the previous year. So there were a couple freaks at junior worlds last year. So his total isn't 81% of the winning total, I think. And so he's off the team. It's a USA. Don't get me started on the USAW, but
damn. No, that's still awesome. And to have not only be able to teach your seminars and kind of branch out on your own and start to like grow your own business and work with more clients in person, it's awesome to have like your own competitive team and start to work remotely with more and more clients and athletes. What what's kind of the plan going forward with like with everything? Are you trying to kind of branch out to more places? Are you looking to create more of a competitive team, or are you kind of just organically seeing which kind of takes off more so?
I definitely want to keep growing my competitive team. Hopefully, get to a point where we can show up at a nationals with 10 people. Um, that's a ways down the line, but that's the overall goal. Gonna get into a couple different gyms here with classes, hopefully in the next few months. But I really like growing the remote part too. As a weightlifter, as a competitor, I uh, I did I was remote most of my career. I mean, I was fairly successful. I won nationals in 2019, and I did it training alone. I would talk to Dave out of Cal Strength. You know, we would text back and forth a few times a week, but for the most part, like I didn't have a coach, I didn't have a training partner, so it was me kind of figuring stuff out on my own, and it sucked at the time. But what it allowed me to do um, is figure out what works and what doesn't as a remote coach because I was a remote athlete for so long. And so that's really helped me deal, like, not deal with, help my remote athletes better, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I've trained by myself, obviously not at the same level as you, and trying to balance, go back and forth between multiple sports is its own nightmare as well. But like those are definitely big obstacles to kind of try to jump over and manage, especially when at the same time you're doing what everybody else is doing. You're trying to coach as well, but
Yep.
like no instant feedback. Like you don't have a coach there. Everything, especially weightlifting, where everything is timing and everything is
Yep.
technique and precision. When you start getting up, like, I mean, I'm sure your weightlifting, especially coming from like Cal Strength and like Dave Spitz and everything, I mean, it's twice a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, once on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And like for
Yep.
the most part, like that's a lot of sessions to not have immediate feedback, be in
Yes.
a completely different time zone. And by the time you do get feedback, you're already at your next training session. So
Yep.
you can't
Yeah.
really make any tweaks in that moment.
Yeah. It's tough. And so, like, if I go through my Google account, my photos account, basically every lift I did from 2013 through 2019 is there. I would record every single set. I'd watch it back, look, well, okay, I need to do this now. Try to do that, watch it back, next set, okay. Uh, and so I got to a point where, let's say 5 sets was prescribed. I would, depending on the day, I would go 5 sets I was happy with. And sometimes that might be 12, 15 sets. There are other days where I'm like, it doesn't matter how long I do this, I won't have 5 sets that I'm happy with. So let's make these and then move on. Just have to, you have to be able to ride that line of like winning the day as best you can.
Yeah, that's no, that's a really good point. It's hard to be the athlete and coach at the same time, especially like obviously like talking from you and knowing like your competitive spirit and all the different sports you played and then like really taking a foothold into weightlifting. It's difficult to like know if like you're just being soft in that moment or like you're beating your head against a wall and you're not going to accomplish anything for that day. So it's hard to realize like is it worth another set? Is it worth another attempt at this? Is that the one that's going to break you through or is it the one that's going to break you?
Yeah.
And that you're your only judge at that point.
Well, it's something I figured out later. I mean, I think every young strength athlete goes through that bulletproof stage where, like, oh shit, I can go to max every day. This is awesome. And then as you get older, like when you're 7 years into training full time, you're like, I cannot do that. But not only that, what I was like, I didn't, I wasn't afraid to back off. Like it doesn't matter today if I snatch 100 kilos or 110 kilos. A year from now, it doesn't matter. What matters is constantly just trying to move the needle. And if the day I'm not going to make 110 look good, but I can make 100 look pretty good, what, like the 10 kilos doesn't make a difference.
No, that's a great point. I think that comes with time. I think you're right too. Like the beginning stage of any strength athlete, like you could run through a wall and like the best sort of like performance enhancement drug is adolescence and puberty. So
Yeah.
like that's easy at that point in time. But when you start getting up in age or you start getting some years behind the bar and actually knowing what you're doing, like that becomes different. Like you have to be a lot more calculated with it, like you said, and really just find ways to get your best effort for that specific day. Might not be the best overall, but you're really playing the long game at that point. And even more so with weightlifting too, when or Olympic sports in general, like you're playing an even longer game than what most people in team sports would play because you're looking at a 4 year cycle or you're
Yep.
looking at like even a 2 year cycle, whatever it's going to be. You're trying to project what you can do a lot further down the line. So is it really worth in that moment to try to like push something super ugly when you can kind of live to fight another day and just keep making progress and chipping away over months at a time?
And for weightlifting in particular, the tough reality is, um, you're going to be good at lifting like 3 weeks out of the year. The rest of the time, you're going to be like, how the fuck did I ever snatch this? Or how did I ever clean and jerk this? Like, it just doesn't make sense. But then all of a sudden, if you trust your coach, trust your program, they know what they're doing. I always knew when it came time to peak, Dave would have me strong as fuck. He would have me ready to go. And sure enough, every single time I was strong, I was ready to go, I was making lifts. And so the first few years, that was tough. But then you're like, oh, I just have to get through this. This is the tough part. It's coming. And then that's the reality that a lot of people don't want.
Right. Well, now being kind of on the flip side, where obviously like you've shifted more of your focus to coaching now, you've already gone through that and you've had to make that shift yourself. But how do you kind of, being the coach, try to decipher and actually project those lessons onto your athletes and even the remote athletes that are going through a similar training process that you went through? Like, how do you manage like their approach to training and really preach a long game? Because you talked about like your youth athletes, like I don't know if it is, but like short-term gratification stuff is kind of hard to deal with even like college athletes I have. So how do you like manage that with them and show them that it's got to be long term and we really have to like sustain success over a long period of time?
Uh, so I mean, there's a few different things. The big thing is I'm like, for most of my athletes, they're all like working professionals. They all do other things. So even the ones that train 4 or 5 days a week, I'm like, you're here for an hour every single day, right? But you have other things going on. Like, this doesn't matter. You're still going to make rent. Like, none of this matters. It's all just fun. So like, understand what part of your life this is. It's not that big a deal. The other thing is, all of my athletes say I'm like super patient. They're like, I'm not a yeller. First of all, I don't yell at anybody, but also it's something I realized pretty early in my coaching career. No one is trying to lift shitty. Like, they're trying as hard as they can to do it right. If they don't, that's okay. Like, I know that they're trying so fucking hard to not make a mistake. And so it doesn't make any sense to get upset with them. I mean, every once in a while, they'll get upset and that frustration comes out. And then I'll have to pull the leash and be like, look, I can't make the lift for you. You have to make the lift. I can tell you how to make the lift. I can try to help lead you there. But in the end, it comes down to you doing the thing to make the lift. But I mean, that's kind of how I approach it. Most of my athletes get it. They all know my background. And so they trust me and that I'm doing the things that they need to do. They see the incremental progress and they're like, oh, okay, I'm going down the right path.
I like that.
So I mean, yeah.
No, I'm going to have to remember that. No one is purposely trying to lift shitty. I'm going to have to remember that, because I could tell you some of my athletes do a really good job of faking it then, or trying to disprove that point, because some of the stuff definitely hurts my eyes. But it's a good point. I don't think anybody is going to go in there and just try to fold themselves in a back squat and purposely cave their knees in. They don't know any better. It's just, it's hard to watch sometimes. But no, I know I like that, because I think being a patient coach, that's something I've always tried to work on. And it's just, I think when you're forced, like in the college sector, to be confined to like 1 hour and you have a time limit, like you have no time to waste, and there's no fluff in there. Like, you don't really are afforded that opportunity. So that's one fault, but it's no excuse for not having some patience and actually getting to understand your athletes. But I think it's definitely a helpful thing for you to possess.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, most of my people, they're not super competitive. So I treat Colin, my young kid that's really good, he gets coached very different than one of my remote athletes that comes to my class too, she's a lawyer. She's a full-time lawyer. So like she gets treated different than Colin. Sometimes I have to yell at Colin a little bit. She doesn't get yelled at because she's a lawyer. She's not trying to be an Olympian one day. She enjoys lifting, and me cracking the whip on her, like that's just going to make it not fun for her. That's not fun for anybody.
Right. No, that's a good way to put it too. Obviously, like I think we try to lump people into different categories, and like I probably fell victim to that even when you were talking, and I don't even mean to do it. When you say like competitive, like you say you're remote athletes, my first thought process is, oh, well, they all want to be the best at weightlifting. But you said it yourself, like some of them, this is just like a competitive outlet. It's a hobby for them.
Yeah.
It's not going to pay the bills. So you really have to understand what each individual athlete's goals and expectations are. And like you said, you coach your youth like athlete Colin to a higher level, to a higher standard, because he's expressed that that's what he wants to do. So you're going to help hold him accountable. But for someone else that's doing this like 3 or 4 days a week, and it's not a daily occurrence, like this is kind of a make or break, even though he's probably not like paying the bills either. Like this, it's, you have to coach them slightly different because it doesn't fall in line with their goals necessarily.
Yeah. And like they all want to be the best at weightlifting, but that's different. Best at weightlifting isn't the same thing for everybody. Colin, he is gonna make junior teams. He's probably gonna make senior teams. Like the best for weightlifting for him, his ceiling is vastly higher than someone who finds a sport in their 30s, who's a full-time whatever, doing other things. They're married, they have whatever else. Like they want to be the best too, but it's just up to them to manage their own expectations on what their ceiling is.
Right. Yeah, because I think most of those people aren't willing to like necessarily sacrifice a career or anything like that for like the potential of success, especially like if you're catching on to that later in your career, later in your lifetime. So for talking about like when you were remotely coaching or when you were a remote athlete and everything, what kind of shifted for you, or was there anything else that more so, let me rephrase it, like was there anything that really kind of benefited you to kind of keep you motivated or keep you on track a little more so? Or do you think inherently you were just kind of destined to be a good individual athlete and train on your own? Because you did wrestling, you did MMA, like they're individual sports, you still need people to train with, but like that mindset for those sports is a little bit different. It's very similar to what I think to be like strength sports, like powerlifting, strongman, Olympic lifting. Did that kind of help you, or was there anything else that really helped you kind of be a successful remote athlete without an in-person coach all the time?
So honestly, this is for sure not mentally healthy, but it's just like this bottomless pit of self-loathing. A friend of mine says no one hates Jake like Jake hates Jake, because I nitpick at every single thing that I do. So I watch back every single set. I was willing to watch every single set. I was willing to spend 25, 30 hours a week training to get through everything I needed to get through. Like it didn't matter that I didn't want to be there sometimes. That's what I did. And because I had these goals, and that's what I needed to do to try to reach those goals. And so I think my work ethic is the one thing that I could always control. Like I can't control anything else, but no one's going to fucking outwork me. I'll work really hard. And so that's what got me through.
I like it. No, I think Matt Vincent says it pretty well too with Hate Brain Goods and everything. And it's self-loathing like at its finest, and it's not being satisfied with being mediocre or just being consistent at something. It's really striving to push forward and like take the extra step, and that comes with nitpicking, and that comes with really getting outside your comfort zone more so. So no, it's a testament to what you did. Like obviously you had a lot of success. You competed at the national level, like at the American Open and like nationals and winning 2019 nationals. That's already a difficult feat in itself to not have people around you all the time and push you to train, and you're the only one really holding you accountable every day. And you could tell Dave what you're doing, and it might not be that, or it might be just a video from last week and he wouldn't know the wiser. So it's pretty cool to see people be successful at that level, and especially at the level where they're doing it themselves. So what from there though, like we've already talked a little bit about your coaching and everything. What kind of shifted you from being a competitive athlete as like the primary focus into like what really drove you to have coaching kind of overstep that and now be your main objective more so?
So obviously my goal was always to make a world or Pan Am team. I was ranked a few times. Didn't quite make it. I was very close in 2018, end of 2017, beginning of 2018. And then they changed the weight classes, and I was hoping for like a 115, a 120. That would have been perfect for me, but they didn't. So at that point, I was a heavyweight. I didn't want to weigh 125 kilos anymore. It was very difficult for me to maintain that weight. And so I went from 125 to 109 in like 9 weeks. It was super. It was easy. I just didn't have to eat that much. It came off like nothing. And then, so 2018, the American Open. So basically the last half of 2018, I couldn't snatch. Like there was something wrong with my hand. I ended up getting it checked out, and the doctor said it was just like bad tendonitis. But like I couldn't like twist a door handle. It felt like my hand was broken. Like I couldn't hold a bar. I couldn't turn a door handle, like anything. So from August to November, I didn't snatch once. And then I couldn't jerk either. I could clean. Cleans felt okay. Couldn't put a bar overhead. And then they talked me into doing the American Open, even though I hadn't really snatched. So I did it. I snatched like 3 times before that. I think I snatched 140 3 times before that. Went to the American Open, did 150, 180, got third, had second on the bar, just missed the jerk. But then I took 2 months off, so I didn't lift from middle of December to February of 2019. Came back, ended up doing 160, 190 as a 109. And then I did that at a meet like 3 weeks before nationals, won nationals. And then I was like, I still trained, but I was like, I'm not making a world team. I won a national championship. When I started lifting, I was like, oh, it would be pretty cool to make nationals one day. And so, not that I was satisfied. I was just like, I think I've achieved everything I'm going to achieve. I still lifted at the American Open in 2019. Dave talked me into finishing out my career there. Got second, going 2 for 6. I should have won. I just honestly half-assed training because I knew I was done at the end of the year. And so, basically after I won nationals, I was like, all right, it's time to pivot. I saw how Colin was, like I knew Colin was going to be good at that point. And I already had started my classes in Des Moines. And so I knew what the next step was going to be.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to not be all in at that point, especially at the level you were. And obviously like the goalpost changed for you when you first got, from the time you first got it started in weightlifting until like 2019 rolled around and you already had a national championship under your belt and you kind of saw like the exit door at that point. But yeah, you definitely accomplished a lot more than you had set out to that point. And it's not like it's a wash or anything either. but I think most coaches and most athletes are always going to finish kind of unsatisfied, maybe with no regrets. Some people might have regrets at that point, but to still chalk it up as a lot that you were able to accomplish in that time. And now, luckily for you, be able to kind of put that energy and focus right away and direct it to coaching. That's always a nice thing to have, because I think a lot of athletes that get out of college or get out of professional life, like they don't really have anything lined up for themselves. Like, did you kind of already knew that that was going to be your exit plan no matter what? So was it a pretty smooth transition for you to go right into coaching pretty much full time now?
Yes and no. Like, the coaching part was easy. It was very difficult to, like, right now I'm starting to get back into training. Today I was front squatting 161. I've snatched that. I've snatched 160 probably 50 times, but it was heavy to front squat today. And so, like, that's a bit of a mind fuck, just to know that Father Time doesn't give a shit who you are. Like, you're going to get older. Your priorities are going to change. I'm not 25 anymore. I can't train the way that I was. Like, that's tough to deal with sometimes. Most of the time it's fine, but every once in a while, it's tough. Or, like, I do jiu-jitsu now too. I go 4 to 5 days a week. At this point, I'm not doing a ton of live rolling, mostly just drilling. But so for the first year and a half I'm 2 years in now. For the first year and a half, just to kind of speak to my psychotic mind, like, I couldn't do 3 classes a week. I was doing 8 classes a week. I was going to the competition class. I was going twice a day, most days. I was doing a ton of hard rounds every week. And as a 33, 34-year-old man, it's fucking hard on you. Like, I was just beat up all the time. And so, like, I've backed out of that a little bit too. But I mean, it's just, I don't know. At times it's tough. Other times it's fine.
Was when you kind of got out of, like, competitive weightlifting, like after 2019 kind of wrapped up, is that what is, like, BJJ is kind of what filled that hole for training? Because it was something new, or it was something that you hadn't really done officially. Like, you'd done some rolling, like when you're in college, but like it wasn't going to be at the same level that you were just finishing off with weightlifting. Was that kind of the rationale for it?
Yeah. I was like, well, I'm done weightlifting. I want to be good at something else. And I enjoy jiu-jitsu. I mean, like I said, it wasn't jiu-jitsu, but I've come to learn. But I enjoyed it, and I wanted to get better at it. And, like, started going constantly. Go twice Monday, twice Tuesday, once or twice Wednesday. Like, it was just constant.
So with that, like, I know we talked about it before, because like, you're getting back more into weightlifting and everything too, and you kind of have your eyes set on some of those masters records in the future. But with jiu-jitsu and some of the other, like, sports that you pulled in, like, did you always kind of have, like, a goal in mind as you, like, first started it? Like, so when you started getting involved in jiu-jitsu, and like you said, I'm psychotically going 8 times a week and just diving deep into it. Did you have a goal in mind? Like, hey, I'm going to turn this into my next weightlifting adventure. Like, I'm going to compete at this level, or I'm just going to take it for a ride and see where it's going. Because I know we talked, like, I can't train without, like, a carrot. I just can't go in there for the fun of it. Like, I want to know there's a purpose behind it, and I want to kind of competitively challenge myself. Was jiu-jitsu, like, kind of the same thing?
Yes. So I've done a few competitions, then 2 competitions. My original goal was to compete in jiu-jitsu at the highest level I could. Having done a couple of them, I don't particularly enjoy the experience. Not because of, like, I don't like the rule set. So, like, in the last one that I did, there's no stalling. And so anytime I would tie up with one guy, he would just back out. and then we'd reset. And so it was that. And like, I came to go. Like, I want to go. I don't want to play the points. I don't want to play the rules. I should have changed my tactic, but I didn't. So that annoyed me. To pay $150, I lost on points in overtime because I tried to pull guard to get something going. So like, I pay $150 for this guy to not grapple me. And so I was just like, what am I doing? Like, this isn't fun at all. And so I've come to enjoy the drilling part of it quite a bit. I'll roll live once a month maybe. But for the most part, it's just really drilling things, being able to take things slow, feel out positions. That's what I've come to enjoy at this point.
Yeah, I did. I started doing jiu-jitsu like right when COVID hit, like a few months before COVID. And then being stuck in California, you had to really keep it on the low to find partners to go roll, especially in the California area. It was rough, but that was definitely talking to other guys that like our strength coaches that do jiu-jitsu as well. Like that was the thing that we always kind of talked about, like enjoying the drilling. Like I think I'm in the same boat as you. I haven't done any competitions, but I know I don't like the subjectivity of it, where it's like, this is these kind of rules, and like, yeah, you compete to the rules, but for me, I really enjoy the drilling aspect of it, and like learning the positions. And like, I feel like it's weird because I feel like I can coach those things better than I can do them. And it kind of reinforces the fact that that's why I'm a coach, not a competitive, not like a high level competitive athlete or anything. So
yeah, my coaches talk to me about running a class in the future, just because I'm pretty good at coaching weightlifting, and I imagine I could probably coach the things that I know decently.
No, that'd be an awesome mix, obviously, with your background and pedigree and all these different sports. That would definitely be an interesting thing to kind of start to tie all those things into like your coaching tree. When you kind of look at it from a coaching lens and from like an athlete lens, like in all your experience and everything, what do you kind of really think makes up a successful coach, and then what makes up like a successful athlete, like in your opinion?
Successful coach, you can't think that you know everything. Like, it's okay to ask other people. If you don't know something, it's okay to say, I don't know. Like, let me go find out. Let me ask someone else. Like, I think that's the biggest thing to being a good coach. On top of, like, when it comes to strength coaching in particular, if you've never like really trained, you can't coach people to train hard if you've never trained hard. I don't believe, because like football, you can understand the game and you can coach it, but strength training, you can't understand how hard it is to train hard if you've never done it. And then to be a successful athlete, it's just kind of, I think, to me, understanding the long game. Like you mentioned earlier, like delayed gratification. Like for me, when I have someone like Colin, it's making him understand that I don't give a shit about him making a youth team. I don't care about junior teams. We're looking at senior teams. Now he's going to make these junior teams, but we're not peaking with the intent to like, okay, this total for this team, we're looking to make a good senior athlete. And so for him, that means build a big ass foundation that we can start building on later in his career. And so it's being okay with that.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's definitely helpful advice for any athlete or coach. Those are some manageable things that you can really kind of take into account and make sure that what you're doing falls in line with those. I think that's important to know. So what's kind of next? Do you have any, like we talked about before, like with Jake Pudenz, like Strength and Power and like your business and everything, and hopefully branching out to teach more classes and more locations and build up the remote athlete, like your team, your competitive team and everything. Have you thought about like looking into actually like starting a gym in the area, or like what are your kind of thing, like steps to like kind of build just the brand in general and like build up kind of your company as a coach?
Um, I've thought about the idea of starting my own gym. I've had people talk to me about it. Realistically, I don't want like the headache of it. I don't want to have to have all that overhead when I could just rent space from these gyms. That's just, it's an easier route for me. It would be cool to have my own space, but I've seen too many people have gyms and lose them within a few years just because it's hard to keep the doors open. So for me, I like what I'm doing right now. The gyms that I work with are awesome. Um, Everyone like supports each other. Everyone wants each other to do well, and so everyone's posting about like it works really well. Um, and then remote, like I just kind of at this point, I'm busy enough with my remote stuff that I take athletes on case by case. And so if there's someone I'm excited about working with, I'll take them on. If not, I'll say maybe this isn't the best fit, things like that, which is a good place to be in. Um, and then I want things to grow organically and at a slow enough pace that I can keep up with. Um, I'm not I'm not in a place where I'm ready to hire someone yet, mostly because um, I'm like my name is on the business. It's Jake Pudenz Strength and Power, and I don't think most coaches are like as crazy about technique as I am. Like even if they don't know all that I know, they like most people are okay with like a shitty lift. Like they don't have anything to say. I'm not okay with like I'm saying something after every lift. Like no lift is perfect, so do this better. And and if someone's name isn't on their business, like they have no dog in that fight. To me, I like showing up at these meets, and my lifters almost always have the last clean and jerk of the session, and we almost always have the best technique there.
I like it. Hey, you kind of said it there, like for yourself, like no lift is perfect, and you're always trying to give feedback to your athletes and like actually like give them some cues or some pointers within that lift or within that session. Does that change as like Colin or any of your youth lifters like start to get more advanced to the senior level? Do you foresee that as they kind of get the same number of years under the bar that you have, like as a competitive weightlifter, that like maybe coaching cue and like that philosophy might change a little bit to the point where they're starting to have more input on what they're doing in the program, or they have more input and they're kind of bouncing ideas back with you, or how do you kind of foresee that happen if it hasn't already happened before?
It's happening now with Colin, especially. We have a little bit of a dialogue going back and forth. He he's not missing lifts for new reasons at this point, and so he knows what he needs to fix. It's just, I mean, he sends me videos every single day, so he's remote right now. He sends me videos every single day. We look through them. Like he knows why he's missing, but he'll like say, "Is this better? Is this more what you're looking for?" Stuff like this. Um, and if he's not like hey, this just isn't working. Sometimes it's a day. For the most part though, he's willing to work through things, and so when he tells me, hey, this isn't working, okay, well then we pull the plug on it and put in something else that might work. um, so I don't like subscribe to the idea that I'm perfect and I write perfect programs every single time. Sometimes shit doesn't work and we need to replace it, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think having an open dialogue, especially as like your athletes get more like a more familiar with the lifts and become
Yeah.
technically proficient and obviously have trust in you and understand what you're trying to get across, and they can feel it even if they can't actually see what's going on and understand, like, from your point of view, what's going on. Like, that's still a very important thing to kind of a piece of the puzzle to add in. Have you yourself, or like with some of your athletes, like actually for you specifically, when you were training remotely and everything, did you ever get stuck in like a super big plateau where it's like nothing isn't working, like you're beating yourself against the wall, like Dave is giving you feedback, teammates are giving you feedback, but for whatever reason, something's just not clicking? Like, did that ever happen to you? And like, if it did, like what really kind of helped get you past that point to actually work on the next thing and push past that point?
Generally, I would forget how to snatch once a year and forget how to jerk once a year. I could always clean, but it's just like for me at that point, like later in my career, it was just understanding this is part of it, and then also it it became like being more intentional with. So most of the work is like 65 to 70%. And so when I have a snatch variation, so Tuesdays and Thursdays were way more technique based. So on those Tuesdays and Thursdays, it's not just doing the variation with the intent to get, all right, I have 5 sets, let's get through 5 sets. Well, why am I doing this exercise? How does this translate to the full lift and what I'm doing wrong? And so being very specific and intentional about those movements and how they translate to the full lift, that helped me quite a bit.
I like it. I think that's helpful, regardless if you're a weightlifting athlete, like where you're most of the time squatting, pulling, you're doing clean and jerks and snatch. Like that's the majority of what your training is going to consist of. So when it's that kind of centrally focused on those things, you really do have to be intentional with what you're doing and know the purpose behind what's 70% on this day. Like, what are we actually trying to get out of it versus, okay, we're doing 70% 2 weeks later, but it's for a completely different purpose. So,
Yeah. Well, and like I took Colin out to Cal Strength a few times. So I mean, he trained with me a little bit when I was competing, but for the most part, I was done when he started getting pretty good. So I took him out to Cal Strength a few times, and for him to train next to like Wes Kitts, to see Wes take the bar for 10, 15 minutes before he ever puts on 70 kilos. And then he might take 70 kilos 5 times until it feels right. And then like just take plenty of time warming up to see that sort of intention. That really stuck with him as well.
yeah, there's a difference with actually like doing what's on the, like what's prescribed on the paper, and doing it actually with a purpose, with intent, and getting a feel for those things rather than just going through the motions. And it's hard to see that when you can kind of like check off a workout and say that you've done it, versus really like you said, like look at yourself with a critical eye and like really kind of like evaluate yourself. Did I actually do it with the purpose intended for it? If not, like, all right, you're probably going to do another set. You're going to do another rep. You're going to do it till you're going to do it till you can't get it wrong, versus just do it till you get it right once. And
Yeah.
that's a different mindset than most people are going to have. And I think that's one that definitely has made you successful as an athlete, and is going to carry over in your coaching for sure. Hey, so like any good training session, we end the show with a good finisher. So I got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and overtime at the end. So you can go rapid fire or you can take your time on each one. But you ready to roll?
Ready.
All right. First one I got for you. Biggest influence in strength and conditioning, and biggest influence in weightlifting.
Biggest influence in strength conditioning would definitely be Phil. I mean, he got my foot in the door. He kind of taught me the love of just being a gym rat, so to speak. In weightlifting, it's definitely Dave Spitz. To see what he's built out at Cal Strength, and just to be a piece of that history is really cool. I mean, there's not many people that put out an Olympian, and Dave has an Olympian. He has several world team members. He has a bunch of national championships now, and so he's paved the way for American weightlifting, I think.
Not too shabby, two people on that list. So, hey, when I know you got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of different sports, coaching, in person, remotely, and everything, but when it's not in the walls of the weight room, what are you doing outside of coaching and competing? What are some of your hobbies?
I do jiu-jitsu a fair amount, and I go see a lot of bands. I go to concerts a lot, mostly small indie bands that no one's ever heard of. But I think I've probably been to 15 or 20 shows this year.
Damn, what was the most recent one?
The most recent one, there was a little festival downtown Des Moines. Went and saw a couple of bands there, Trevor Sensor and Geese. Before that, June 20th, we went and saw Jeff Rosenstock, he was awesome.
Nice. I missed Dirty Heads last week because I got stuck with a commitment, so I was pretty bummed about that. But I've got Incubus and Sublime with Rome lined up for next week, so
nice.
I'm pretty stoked about that one. That should be fun.
Hell yeah.
Hey, so if you weren't coaching, what do you think you would be doing as a profession if you had to give it a completely different 180 to something else? And since you've already done so many sports, what would be the next one if you had to predict the future?
Like, I've thought about what I would do if I wasn't coaching a lot. But, like, part of me likes the idea of living and homesteading in some other country and just being completely off the grid. I like that idea. Maybe not for the rest of my life, but it would be cool to experience. And then the next sport, I mean, it basically any sport that requires some sort of like very, very active approach to like getting technique right. So like that's why jiu-jitsu is such a natural fit. I mean, jiu-jitsu, there's a million different things.
I think I lost your audio, Jake. Oh, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. I don't know, something went out. No, I think jiu-jitsu is a pretty cool one. Definitely. I can't think of anything else that's going to be quite as technical or kind of fun human chess pieces as that is going to be. So that's definitely a good one. Hey, so if you're setting up an ideal training day for yourself, what is like your go-to training music and hands down best post-training meal look like?
Training music kind of depends on the day. Like I said, I'm a music nerd. Like I put out a top 10 albums list every year for myself. No one cares. I have like 5 friends that care. I still put it out because I enjoy it. I probably listen to 100 to 150 new albums every single year. And so it's usually music to match the intensity that I want of that training session, but also just like, oh, I haven't gotten to this album yet and I want to check this out. So I just listen to that. I don't really listen to songs or playlists at all. I just go albums front to back. And so it just kind of depends on the day and the mood and what I haven't listened to that I want to check out.
All right. What about post-training meal?
I heard Phil say this, and I mean, this is going to be my go-to too. Poncheros for sure.
He said everybody was going to say that one too.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll have to check that out when I roll through Iowa next time.
It's good. It's very good.
Hey, so the last one I got for you for overtime, what's your favorite either under the bar memory or favorite coaching memory of all time?
For myself, like the obvious answer would be winning nationals, but I was honestly I was angry the night that I won nationals because I missed a couple lifts and I was psycho. Probably my favorite memory from weightlifting, at the 2017 American Open, I missed 190 on my opener, clean and jerk, came out and smoked 190 on my second. And then Dave was like, "How strong do you feel?" I was like, "Put whatever on the bar. Get me home with a medal." And so then I jumped 13 kilos to 203 and smoked it, won bronze, that's probably my favorite memory. And then coaching, definitely seeing Colin he got second in the clean and jerk at Worlds. So we were in Saudi Arabia last October, and he's like, I want a medal. That's all I want. Like, I know I'm not going to get a total medal. I want a clean and jerk medal. And so we played the game, and he came home with silver. And so that was for sure my favorite coaching memory.
That's pretty cool. Those two, both of those are definitely pretty similar. And
yeah,
like Dave setting you up and then you setting up Colin, that's pretty cool to put you guys both on the podium and be able to share it, especially now on the other side of the bar, is definitely probably a great feeling, and probably arguably even better feeling too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like seeing him succeed or seeing any of my athletes succeed. So like for Colin, it's him doing the things I was never good enough to do, like him competing in an event. I wasn't good enough to do it. He's on his way to doing that as a senior. So it's fun seeing him succeed. And I think that should be the mark of any coach. It's like, you want your athletes to do better. Just so happened, like I was pretty good as a senior, so he has large shoes to fill, but I want him to do better than I did. And that's what a coach should be trying to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was going to say the exact same thing. So that's awesome. And hopefully you guys have a lot of success working together in the future, and see you get on the podium again at the master's level and everything too. So, hey, I can't thank you enough for coming on today. How can people get in touch with you? If anybody wants to train remotely when you open back up and take on some more clients, or if anybody's in the Iowa area that wants to take a class and seminar with you, how can they get in touch with you or follow along?
Jake.Pudenz on Instagram is pretty much the easiest way to get a hold of me. Email Jake.Pudenz. If you Google Jake Pudenz Strength and Power, all that stuff pops up. So pretty easy. Awesome,
man. Hey, well, like I said, I can't thank you enough for coming on. This has been something in the works for a while, and I'm glad we can keep the Iowa, Georgetown, DC connection going strong. And like I said, it's awesome to hear more about everybody from the Johnson's area and all those guys that work together, because it's a pretty cool thing to see your career as an athlete evolve into coaching, be part of like a Cal Strength generation, which like got me into weightlifting, like the Donnie Schenkel, John North era, like all those guys. And to be a part of the next era of that is definitely cool. And to see you coach now is even cooler.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, those were the Donnie Schenkel, John North videos. Those got me into weightlifting. And then all of a sudden, Spencer Mormon is one of my training partners, and I'm staying with him for weeks at a time. Like it was crazy. It was
That's
fun.
Awesome. No, man, it was good to talk to you, and we'll for sure keep in touch. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man.
Of course, man.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.